I'm Janet.
And I'm Roger.
Welcome to Season 6 of the Halfling and Spaceman Journeys in Active Fandom. We love talking to creators about their journeys. Everyone has a story. We're here to bring those stories to you and hopefully entertain and inspire you. Today, we are happy to have with us Jennifer Povey. Jennifer has authored the Council of Worlds series and has written a number of short fiction stories published in different science fiction fantasy magazines. She is also has a number of credited works in the RPG industry. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm very glad to be here. Very glad to be talking to whatever wonderful people out there I'm talking to. And I hope that we can have some fun here too.
Let's raise the roof, Halfling.
Woo! Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. We really appreciate it and look forward to a great conversation. Let's go ahead and get started. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I am Jennifer Povey. I was born in Nottingham in the English East Midlands, so that's the accent you are hearing. And this is the toned down version so that you can understand me. I emigrated to the US in 1997 to marry the ghost who is wandering around the room trying not to be on screen. But so I am an immigrant and proud of it. I have lived in two countries that are separated by a common language. Good, and I've been a geek my entire life, and also proud of that. I've been
As you should be.
I've been writing for probably 15 years now, I guess, published. And, before that, all the usual on-ramps of fanfic and play by email and all of that stuff. And I think that's everything. More will come out.
It will all show eventually.
Okay.
Well, one of the things, Jennifer, we usually ask early on in our conversations is, were you a geek or a nerd when you were coming along, when you were a little tyke?
She already said she was.
Well, tell us a little bit about that. Come on, give us the dish.
What kind of fandom were you into? What kind of things were you into?
Well, my first fandom was Doctor Who. I don't know how old I was when I watched my first Doctor Who episode. I'm fairly sure I wasn't actually talking yet. My father was very much into science fiction and fantasy, but he also had severe dyslexia, so he didn't read for pleasure. So my introduction to fandom from him was television, and it was all the usual suspects. It was Doctor Who, it was Star Trek, it was Blake 7, which is now finally available in the US, and I can tell all the Firefly fans to go watch the show Read and Ripped Off. And it has many more seasons and crappy special effects, but it was British television in the 70s. So
having written for having written works in the RPG industry, can we assume that you were also a gamer?
Yes, although I didn't really get into RPGs until I was in college for the simple reason that none of the other kids in my hometown wanted to play. I was not able to find a gaming group until I was in college.
Yeah, we have a similar problem now. We can't find olds that want to play with us. So.
Yeah,
we just have the. Put it this way, my group isn't meeting again until the second half of August. because we have all decided to go on vacation in sequence. No coordination here. So the usual D&D scheduling problem. And you're in college, it's easy. Then you all get jobs and children and lives, and it suddenly becomes much harder.
It absolutely is much, much harder when you're an adult. Well, but everything's harder when you're an adult. Let's face it.
This is true.
What I wouldn't give to go back to my university days.
I don't know. I think
Come on.
I think I'm happy to be past that.
We're not going to talk about how old we are.
Well, we're not going to talk about how old we are then. But let me just say that, Noah, Moses, those guys.
Oh, come on. We're not that old. Come on.
Hey.
Jeepers.
Okay. Well, Jennifer, when did you first decide that you wanted to have a career as a writer? That's a big jump. It's not for everybody.
Well, I didn't actually manage to be mature enough to write until I was in my 30s. But I decided I wanted to when I was 8 years old and somebody handed me a copy of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which was the first science fiction novel I read. And I was like, I want to write this. But it took me a long time to get good and develop the maturity to actually be able to sit down for, finish stuff. So it took me a long time to actually start writing, but I always knew I wanted to do it. And I know I don't know anyone else who lists Burns 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea as their very first influence, but I'm sure there are others.
No. I know people who know, The Hobbit or Harry Potter or any more big names, modern names. But yeah, that's Jules Verne. That's old school.
Hey.
Yeah, my parents gave me these beautiful hardback copies of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Treasure Island.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As soon as I was old enough that they knew they could trust me with books.
Wow.
And I am one of those most ridiculously careful people with books.
Oh,
Books are precious. And if you give me a really nice book, I might fondle it. That's been known.
Okay, so we're not the only ones.
Nope. That's okay. We're keeping good company.
That's right. That's right.
Well, so when you did make the decision that you wanted to be a writer, what did you do to prepare yourself for that?
I just wrote, as I say, fanfic, play-by-email RPGs, play-by-post RPGs. It was a lot of online RPG stuff, but really, I don't know any way to prepare yourself for a writing career other than to write. I did have to spend some time studying the business side of things, but I really don't know any way to prepare yourself. You've got to write, you've got to put the butt in the chair, you've got to learn to finish stuff and stuff. So basically just write.
Mm-hmm.
And accept that the first things you write are going to be absolutely terrible. I still have some of my teenage poetry.
Yeah.
Need I say more?
Well, that's what we hear a lot of from writers is that you just write. But so you didn't actually take any formal classes or anything?
No, I did not take formal classes. I was very much put off formal instruction in creative writing because I had a high school English teacher who I wanted to hugely respect who hated science fiction. And she convinced me that if I went to college to do English, I wouldn't be allowed to study science fiction because it wasn't literature.
Mm.
So that's why I don't have an English degree.
Mm-hmm.
I would have had an English degree if I'd been, but at that time in the UK, that was really what it was. Science fiction was for children. It was juvenile. It was stupid. It would rot your brain. So you didn't, and if you wanted to go to college, you had to learn to pretend to like Charles Dickens and Jane Austen. And I actually do quite like Charles Dickens. Jane Austen. Okay, can I disparage dead creators? That's a joke. Jane Austen was a fine writer of things I happen not to like.
I don't think the Austen estate's going to come after us, so it's probably okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. We might get some Austen fanboys out there who just torches and pitchforks.
No. Fine writer of stuff I happen not to like. Like the entire comedy of manners thing just bores me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting more tolerant of it as I get older.
Mm.
What was that book that I gave you? Pride and Prejudice and Zombies.
Yes.
That makes Austen readable.
Zombies. I loved it.
I have not read it.
You should. And there's a sequel to it, Sensibility and Sea Monsters.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great stuff. Fun stuff.
Although the irony is one of my favorite movies is actually an adaptation of Pride and Prejudice, but it was done through the lens of a Bollywood musical.
Okay, that does sound fun.
It's called Bride and Prejudice. And
that does sound kind of fun.
So much fun that we actually saw it in the theater like 5 times.
Yeah, we did. It's a great movie. You really should, if you get a chance, you really should check it out. Bride and Prejudice. It's the story. It works. They just added that Bollywood influence to it. And,
Darcy is still an Englishman.
No, I can see how that would work.
Yes, musical numbers come from out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Musical numbers coming out of nowhere improve many things.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think we need more musical numbers in real life.
That would be awesome.
That would be like that episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, though.
The musical episode.
Yes.
Yeah, once more with feeling.
Even Doctor Who. Yeah. Even Doctor Who has did a musical episode, and it was fun.
Oh, okay. Well, Jennifer, now that we've talked a little bit about preparing yourself, write if you want to write. Let's talk a little bit about your first novel. How long did it take you to put it together?
Okay, so my first novel took me about 6 months to write and will never see the light of day. It was absolutely terrible, unsalvageable. It is. I still have a copy of it somewhere just because I'm not a believer in actually deleting stuff, but it's in the very, very bottom of the trunk. Now, my first published novel, which is, I think, took me 18 months, something like that. So I'm not one of those people who took 30 years to write their first novel. Took 20 years to be ready to write my first novel, but I'm not one of those people who then, it's very shocked when their second one takes a fraction of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just that I actually did the prep work before I wrote the first page of the novel as opposed to after, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
But yeah, probably 18 months. That was Transspecial, and I don't want to think about how long ago it was published.
I was just wondering, because you've written, some standalone stories. You've written, RPG, things, and then you've also written, your current series, and then I think you had a series before that, didn't you?
Yes. Two series, Lost Guardians, which was 4 books and a prequel. Council of Wolves is 5 books, but is in the same universe as 2 of my other books.
Right.
So yes, I've written 2 series so far.
For the 2 series that you've written, did you always envision them as series, or had you initially thought when you wrote the first book this is going to be it?
No, although I thought Lost Guardians was going to be a trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
It ended up expanding a little bit. Council of Worlds was very explicitly was 5 linked stories. So it's not stories. Well, 4 linked stories, and then the last book is kind of the capstone that pulls them all together. That was always going to be a series. That was always meant to be a work on that scale. I'm not typically, although I do have a couple of standalones that I might go back to and do something else with, but typically I know how long a story needs to be when I start writing it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's 500 words, and sometimes it's 5 books. And sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes I'm wrong and write something for a call, and I'm like, if they don't buy this, or even if they do, I have to go back and turn this into a novella, don't I? Because it doesn't want to be a 4,000 word short story. But no, I did know from the start on both.
And do you find it easier to write a series, rather, or just a single work, or they both have their various challenges?
They both have their various challenges. The advantage of a series is you get 5 books from one set of world building. The advantage of a standalone is if you get bored with it, you can be done faster. Or feel the need to switch to something else for a while. I have a huge amount of respect for people like C.J. Cherry and Jim Butcher, who can write the Butcher and Patrick Rothfuss and Brandon Sanderson, who could just write these ridiculously long series, like 20 books. I can't do that. My muse will insist at some point, no, we've got to move from on to something else. We've got to do something else now. Huge respect for the people who can do the Eternal series.
Sure.
But it's really to me, it's about how much space that story needs for me to be able to properly tell it.
Jennifer, in addition to writing your novels, you did work in the RPG industry and did several supplements. Yes. How did that come about? How did you get involved with the RPG industry? And we're talking TTRPGs, tabletop.
Yes, we are. That's actually kind of a sad story. And that is my friend Steve was the founder of Write Publishing, which is RITE.
Mm-hmm.
I'm spelling that out because it's kind of important. And I was a member of his playtest group. For a while, I was also involved in playtesting for another friend. So I was involved in playtesting, which is how a lot of people get in. And the reason it's a sad story is because I never actually got to work for Steve because he was killed by a drunk driver several years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And that old playtesting group is my gaming group that I run. With a couple of minor changes, but the core group is still the same people. But I still miss him. He was an excellent GM and an excellent designer. But TTRPG industry is very, very word of mouth. I always tell people you've got to get in on playtests. You've got to go to cons. You've got to sit down with companies, and you've got to play with people to get in. That's really how it works. Well, sometimes you do get open calls posted, but the industry's been in a bit of a mess since the pandemic. I have not had much work since the pandemic, and I'm not allowed. It started to pick back up now. But the paper shortages hit the tabletop RPG industry really hard. Because RPG books are big and thick and use a lot of paper. And the problem with digital RPG books, they're great, but you can't hand them around the table. I mean, you can. I have handed my tablet around the table, but it's a lot easier. So there's a lot of preference still for nice, big, weighty physical books.
I'm very much of the physical book variety myself.
Yeah, me too.
I've gotten used to ebooks because I've also done some reviewing, and I don't want to dispose of paper arcs. So it's like the tablet is a library too.
Okay.
But you can also see some books behind me. That's part of my to-be-read pile.
Well, Jennifer, as part of your work in the TTRPG field, what game systems did you write supplements for?
I've written for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, 5e and variants of 5e, because people like to use 5e to do stuff with. I've written for Savage Worlds. I did something for Castle Falkenstein. The Versus system, which some of you will have heard of, but a lot of you probably haven't, because it's pretty obscure. And I've done quite a bit of what I would call system-free stuff, where, it's just lists of stuff, flavor text, etc.
Talking about flavor text, a couple of years back when Janet and I were still busy publishing our pulp magazine, we attended a panel at RavenCon. This was probably right before the pandemic. And Janet was on a panel with a gentleman who made his living. All he did was write flavor text for RPGs. Just flavor text.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Flavor, you need a lot of it.
And not everybody is skilled. I can write technical documents till the cows come home, but the more creative side, it just boggles me. You wouldn't want to read a RPG book designed by me. Is this an RPG book or is this an engineering manual?
I mean, the biggest thing I've probably actually done that people probably don't know I've done, because the way crediting works in TTRPGs, or someone's worked on that book, but you don't always necessarily know what they did, is that I actually rewrote Errorstill and Yomade for Pathfinder 2nd Edition to make them more rogue. And I am not joking. There was some stuff that they wanted me to update because it wasn't hugely inclusive. But I'm actually responsible for the current Pathfinder Society versions of Errorstill and Yomade.
Well, congratulations. That's a big credit.
That's awesome.
And that's not said. People might see my name in the credits, but the name isn't necessarily linked to which part of the book you actually did. It's just like that list of writers that you see at the end of the book, and it's like, somebody wrote this chapter, somebody wrote that chapter, somebody wrote the other chapter, and you never quite know who wrote what unless you ask them.
Well, I want to switch gears for just a second. And this is just sort of a fun question to think about, but what character from any of your books would you think most reflects you?
I mean, the problem with that is they all reflect little bits of me. There's a lot of me in Sousa. Kat got all my snark. That's the... So Sousa is one of the protagonists of Transspecial. Kat is the protagonist of Firewing. Although she's way gayer than I am. She doesn't do guys at all. But I realised that a lot of the time, I don't write characters, because I thought this question got me thinking. I don't generally write characters I want to be. I write characters I want to spend time with. Or sometimes characters I don't want to spend time with, but who are fun in other ways. I've definitely written characters. I'm like, I would trust this person to get me through a dungeon, but I'm not sharing a beer with them. But that's a lot of time when I choose the protagonist, I mean the Lionel, who's one of the protagonists of Kicks, which is the first council book, is a total asshole at the start of the book. He becomes much nicer by the end. So it's not always a rule, but a lot of the time I have to spend time with this person in my head. So there needs to be somebody I either enjoy spending time with or enjoy doing all kinds of nasty things too.
Now that's funny. That's funny. So talking about
I know that's a weird answer, but
No, it's a great answer.
Yeah.
Because writing villains is writing villains can be harder than writing heroes. Although writing heroes can be hard too. But that's an interesting approach. So, who would you say that you've drawn the most inspiration from as a writer? What other writer, or really anyone, has influenced you the most in your writing journey?
I mean, I can't pick just one. I obviously have a lot of Tolkien influence because don't we all? I'm strongly influenced by Heinlein, but the Heinlein of Moon is a Harsh Mistress, not the Heinlein of Stranger in a Strange Land and Weird Sex Cults. Heinlein was at his very best when he was writing for teenage boys and had an editor to tell him to stop doing that. I would love to say I'm influenced by C.J. Cherryh, but I cannot keep up with her. Let's see. Who else? There's probably a bit of Anne McCaffrey in there because I love Pern, whether I want it to be in there or not. I always considered her a far better world builder than a writer, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
She was really good at making fascinating worlds that you wanted to explore, but didn't necessarily always hang the best plot on it. But I still love her work, and it's definitely in there. Mercedes Lackey is definitely in there. There's a lot of people that are in there because I read widely. Actually, that's the other thing I would say if you want to be a writer. You've got to read. You've got to read widely. Sometimes you have to read something you don't particularly like. Sometimes it's a case of, why is this book popular? I'm going to analyse this book to see why it's popular. Which is how I ended up reading the Da Vinci Code. I refused to do it with Twilight.
You got to draw the line someplace.
That's right.
I don't know, Janet. Are you into sparkly vampires?
No, my vampires don't sparkle. No.
So are you more the vampire Lestat kind of vampire lover, Janet, or do you like see, I'm more of a Count Orlok kind of guy.
Well,
I was a huge Buffy fan, although I find it very hard to watch now, given what we know about things that were going on that set, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah.
But I always preferred my vampires to be more predatory and less sparkly. I also went through a phase of just avoiding vampires, which was also when I was writing Lost Guardians, which is why I have a 5-book urban fantasy series in which vampires exist in one throwaway line that's a bad joke because I was so tired of vampires when I was writing the first book that I just decided to just not use them. So I kind of got put off vampires in that period where everything was just vampires everywhere. But there was just massive vampire craze that Twilight was a part of that. And I was just like, you know what? I don't care about vampires anymore. I don't want to hear about vampires anymore. Let's do something else.
You know, the most fun I think we've had with vampires recently was the Munsters prequel that Rob Zombie did recently. That was a lot of fun.
I will also say that if you have a high tolerance for blood horror and vampire horror and have not seen Sinners yet, do. It may be my favourite vampire movie of all time.
Mm-hmm.
My favourite serious vampire movie of all time. That movie is just so good.
Yeah, we'll make sure we check it out. It's been on our...
Yeah, it's on Max.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's on Max. Okay. Sounds like a trial to Max.
Sure. Sure. You have, written in several different types of projects, be it magazine articles or short stories or the RPG industry or your own novels or a series. Do you have a preference as to as to what you're writing specifically? I mean, whether you write for the industry or whether you're writing your own book or whether you're writing, a short story for a magazine. Do you have a preference?
I mean, I like a lot of variety. I don't like only doing one thing. I think if I had to pick a thing, it's probably short fiction, just because you can play with so many things in a short story that if you play with them in a novel, you're taking a much bigger risk. It's 4,000 words of experimental stuff or weird storylines or what if this happens is a lot less risky than 80,000 words. So I think if I absolutely had to pick only one thing, it would be short fiction, but I really love it all.
How do you promote your books? And yeah, do you go to conventions?
Not very well is the first answer. I'm not good at marketing. I'm always trying to find super fans who will do it for me. But I use social media, I use conventions, I've used paid ads in the past and probably will again. But you have to be careful with those. It's easy to waste a lot of money on that, which is why I'm not doing it right now. I kind of reset on that. And, talking to people. And it's also a good idea to assume that you might bump into a fan anywhere. I've sold books to somebody I was buying makeup from for a costume. I sold a book to somebody at a barbecue joint. So, fans you can find your fans anywhere. And that's one of the things I would say is find your fans anywhere, and anyone can be a potential fan. So be nice, be a nice person as best you can. Not this, or at least a good person. Sometimes you have to be less than nice.
I understand that feeling. I really do.
Now, related to marketing, how important do you think conventions are to the both established and aspiring authors?
I think conventions are very important, and I'm going to preach a little bit here is that we have cons that are trying to do hybrid options and struggling to find volunteers. We do not have enough virtual cons because there are far too many people who can't travel. And that does not mean we shouldn't have great cons, and I love going to cons, but we also need to make sure that we extend that to people who may not be able to leave their home for health or financial reasons. But I think that conventions, first of all, they're a very safe space, and the majority of cons are a safe space for neurodivergent fans. They are a safe space for queer fans. They are a safe space for disabled fans in a world that is often becoming more hostile to the people who are different. Different conventions are a line we can hold. I also find that they're great for a creative recharge and for trading ideas, and sometimes for getting the kick up the butt on something you need to do, or giving the kick up the butt to somebody else on something they need to do. Like, no, write that book. I know you think it's too weird. Write it anyway. Do it.
Every book has a market. Whether you think it does or not, every book has a market. I got a friend of mine who writes exclusively magical realism, and he found a publisher and a market for, and this stuff is
esoteric.
Esoteric. That's a good word. So there's probably a reader out there that just wants to read your manuscript. You just got to connect with them.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the stuff that's been winning awards lately. I'm thinking of Bhadra Chandrasekara's work. Definitely. The Saint of Bright Doors was definitely not what you would call a normal mainstream fantasy book.
Mm-hmm.
So I've started using that to encourage people to write weird stuff, because if you do it well, it can actually do really, really well. And you don't have to write conventional fiction to win awards.
That is very true. Matter of fact, sometimes the best way, if you're chasing awards, sometimes the best thing to do is not write traditional, conventional fiction.
That is true. Although I don't personally think you should chase awards. What I'm saying here is that if this person can win a Nebula for this weird book, you could probably find a market for your weird book. I mean, I don't necessarily think you should chase anything.
Right.
Not awards, not massive amounts of money, though decent amounts of money are nice. But I don't think you should be like, oh, is this book going to do this, that, or the other? That book is going to do what that book is going to do.
It's almost like the book has a mind of its own.
Right. Well, one of the things that I have noticed, because we've done a lot of conventions in the last few years, is that there seems to be a push, and it's a good push, toward more inclusivity.
Inclusivity? Inclusivity? You mean inclusivity? Inclusivity?
That word, yes. Thank you for correcting my grammar.
Hey, you're supposed to be the grammar freak.
I've obviously fallen down on the job.
Then I'll be your grammar accountability partner.
Don't take me for what I say. Take me for what I mean. But would you agree with that, Jennifer? Do you see that as well?
Okay, so here's what I'm going to say. The first time I am a queer neurodivergent woman. The first time I was put on convention programming, more than half of my panels were about quote unquote diversity. Mm. The queer people got put on the queer panels, the disabled people got put on the disabled panels, and it was just like some people, particularly people of color, I particularly heard this from people of color, felt, oh, I'm only being invited to talk about my diversity. And that's totally not true anymore. And that has ceased to be true. And I think that is the biggest change that is one of the big changes I've seen. I've also seen I definitely see more performative, but good performative stuff, like people wearing pronoun badges, and there's also backlash against it. There was some, but I think conventions have started to be more, I think fandom has been more, oh, there's less, oh, you can come and be our trained monkey, which I sometimes felt a little bit like when I was, and I don't mind doing diversity panels, don't get me wrong, I would do diversity panels, but when that's all you're put on, you start feeling like, oh, I'm just here for that. And I'm seeing a lot less of you can come play the party, but you need to leave that part of you outside the room. Mm-hmm. And again, that's something I've also heard particularly from Black fans and creators, that they were kind of expected to kind of leave their Blackness outside. And it's become more, especially in the sort of stuff, if you look at the stuff Chip Zdarsky was writing many years ago, and great writer, and then we compare it with what younger Black authors are writing, and you can see there's much more welcome to Black authors writing stuff that is, in some cases, very, very Black. I just read a book called To Let Them Burn by, oh man, give me a moment here. Oh, So Let Them Burn by Camilla Cole, which is a beautiful YA fantasy book set in a fantasy version of the Caribbean, with a main character based off of Joan of Arc. And that's the sort of thing we're seeing more and more of, and I want to see more and more of. So yes, I think that we are no longer expecting people to mold themselves to the Western paradigm in either themselves or their work, but to really starting to say, please bring your Caribbeanness please bring your queerness with you when you come to the table because we want it. And I think it's making everyone's books better, to be honest.
I agree. And I also like it when people bring snacks. The spaceman will snack with anybody.
Oh, yeah.
So show me your book, bring me some snacks, and I'll make a point of reading it. Of course, the spaceman is always hungry.
You said
it. Hey, you're supposed to be the one that makes the quips about my weight.
Well, Jennifer, what has been the biggest challenge for you in your career?
It's marketing. It's absolutely marketing. That's absolutely my biggest challenge. I am not good at it. I keep trying to get better. I don't know that I don't enjoy being good at it, so that doesn't help. But it's something that has to be done if I'm going to spend more time writing.
You're not one of those.
Less time.
You're not one of those folks that has to get immediately on Instagram when you get home and start taking pictures and getting on Blue Sky going LOL, WTF.
I have joked that I would love to get paid to shitpost. Can I use that word?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's PG-13.
Okay.
Janet,
my challenge is definitely marketing, and I think that's a lot of creators' challenges because it requires a different mindset from creativity. It's from the writing itself, and it's switching between the two is. Also, I'll be blunt, a lot of us have imposter syndrome, and telling everyone else how fantastic our books are has that little kernel of, no, they're not. No, they're not. My books aren't very good.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to develop the mindset like the character of Vizzini from The Princess Bride. What did he say? Socrates, Aristotle, morons. So I think every author needs a little bit of that to overcome that little bit of self-denialism and imposter syndrome.
So, Jennifer, was there ever a point when you thought to yourself, why am I doing this?
The middle of every book, about 35 to 40,000 words every time. I call it Great Sticky Middle Syndrome. And I know I am not the only author that experiences it.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a friend who experiences biblioterminophobia, where you don't want to write the ending because then you're done. But no, for me, it is every time I sit down and write a novel, at some point in the middle, I'm like, this isn't working. I hate this. I never want to see it again. I'm never going to finish this. Why did I start this book? So, yeah. That's the other reason I like short fiction, because it's too short for me to get to that point.
And what keeps you going? What?
Yeah, what kicks you in the butt?
Yeah.
The fact that I hate leaving anything unfinished. So it is internal, but it's like, no, I started this. I am going to finish it. Now, there are situations like there was one time with Kicks, the first council book, where it hit 20,000 words in and I just got stuck. And I was just jammed. It wasn't even writer's block. It was like this writer's quagmire. It's like, this book is not working. This book is completely not working, and this doesn't feel like my normal sticky middle syndrome. Then I listened to an episode of the podcast, Our Opinions Are Correct, in which Charlie Jane Anders said, your protagonist needs this kind of an arc. And I'm like, oh, word I'm not allowed to use here. I've written 20,000 words of my book with the wrong protagonist.
So
I was able to salvage quite a bit of it.
Okay.
But it was like, because I was trying to reuse one of the protagonists from Transpecia, and when she said that, I was like, oh, that's why it's not working. I've told that character's story. She doesn't have another one. She doesn't need to be the protagonist. And it has to be somebody else. but it was also like having that, at least it was only 20,000 words and not 60, but it was still like, but yeah, mostly I just keep myself going by saying, if I don't finish this, nobody at me is ever going to get to read it, so I have to finish it.
Okay. So Jennifer, as a writer, as somebody who does both short fiction, nonfiction, and novels, long fiction, and even series, what do you think makes a good story?
Unfortunately, I've never really been able to answer that with anything other than the definition of obscenity, which is I know it when I see it. But I think what it really amounts to is it's about emotion. And what that emotion is depends on the story. Are you rooting for the heroine and the hero, or the heroine and the heroine for that matter, to get together? Are you going, oh, I, I can't watch this. What's going to happen to these characters? I actually did have somebody walk up to me at a con, wave a copy of Transspecial at me and say, I hate you. Why did you have to? And I'm not going to say what the plot point was because it's a spoiler, and it was one of the best compliments I've ever had, because I'd done something that I know that resonates book. But a good story is one that makes you feel. And that can be achieved in so many ways. And sometimes it's genre dependent. Like a good romance is can be a kind of specific thing. A good horror makes you, but it's a story that makes you feel what the author intended you to feel and experience what the author intended you to experience. Let's put it that way. Because if you're feeling something the author didn't intend you to feel, you're probably watching a really terrible B movie. Which I love, by the
way. We love B movies too. We love B movies.
Oh,
too.
Yeah.
So one of the things we ask all the authors that come on our show is to imagine we're at a convention and we come up to your table. Give us the pitch you would give for your most recent book.
Okay, so I'm going to do this series because my most recent book is a book 5, and I don't pitch my book 5 because that's
okay.
Nobody wants to start
pitch the series.
5.
Sure.
Imagine you have a bunch of aliens all trying to get along, except for the ones that aren't. That's my elevator pitch. It's a series that's really about the formation of something akin to the Federation in Star Trek, and the conflict is between the people who want that and the isolationists and xenophobes, and in a few cases outright fascists who don't. Yes, I punch a few fascists in my books.
Oh, okay. So, Jennifer, where can people find out more about you, your books, and any services that you might offer as a writer?
I am most active on Blue Sky as Ninja Fingers. Pop that in the chat so that you can put it in the show notes.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very poorly maintained website at jenniferpovey.com. But you can. It has links to my ebook store. You can look me up on Amazon. And right now, if this is released by the end of July, which I don't know whether it will be right now, all of my books are 50% off on Smashwords.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Along with many, many, many other people's books.
Awesome. I'll get that in the show notes.
Cool. Absolutely. Well, what's next for you?
I'm working on short fiction and freelance work right now. I know what's next, but I'm not at the point of writing it. I also have a first draft of a non-fiction book that I'm just trying to get a cover art money on which is I'm writing a book about how to moderate panels at science fiction conventions.
Ooh, okay.
Because I realized there kind of wasn't one and was like, somebody should write that. And then I'm like, oh, right.
Jennifer meets somebody. Somebody meet Jennifer.
Yeah, somebody should. And I do occasionally have a story idea where I go, somebody should write that, and it's not me. Who can I hand this to?
Well,
But in this case, it was like, oh, no, it's me.
Well, I'll make a point of buying that book when it's available.
Yeah.
If I ever get it out.
If you ever get it out. No. So I could definitely benefit from that because I've moderated my share of panels, and I don't know if I've done a good job or not. So, Janet?
Well, I know we're kind of getting to the wrap up point, but there was a question that we should have asked a little earlier on, which is, what is the best piece of advice that you could give, somebody who's just starting out in their own writing career?
For writers, it goes back to read. Read widely, read the sort of thing you want to write, read the sort of thing you don't want to write. And I will never say to anyone they have to read the classics or anything like that. But you can learn a lot about plot structure from reading the occasional mystery, even if you don't particularly want to write mysteries. Mm-hmm. You can learn a lot about creating compelling characters from romance authors. Because in my experience, people who write really good romances, because the plot is kind of a formula and kind of set, you have to make it interesting by making interesting characters. So they get very good at that. And you can learn, and yes, you can definitely learn things from the classics. I just don't necessarily feel that people should be putting stuff that was written 150 years ago on too much of a pedestal, or even 80 years ago, because things have changed, times have changed, writing fashions change. I say Heinlein is one of my influences, but I don't write like Heinlein because he was writing years ago in a different time, and the fashions were different. So yeah, read as widely as you can also read stuff written by people who are not like you. Read stuff by people who are of different gender, of different ethnicity, of different cultural background, because A, it will make you a better person, and B, it will give you a chance of being able to write a more diverse cast of characters without getting into trouble. So yeah, that's my advice. But my advice is just to read.
Awesome.
Excellent advice.
It is excellent advice. That means we're already doing, we're already doing the hard part. We're reading.
Yeah. Love to read.
Love diverse authors. Of course, we talk to a lot of folks on the show from all over the world. So that's awesome too.
Yes,
that is awesome too.
That's been one of the great things about doing this podcast is great meeting so many great people that do so many really neat things and hearing about their different experiences.
Isn't that why you do it?
That is absolutely why we do it.
Yep. That's wonderful.
It's cheaper than world travel.
We don't have to travel the world. We can bring the world to us.
That's right. And we've
done
it's
that. A lot cheaper that way.
It is. It's a lot cheaper. All we need is an internet connection.
Well, Jennifer, we want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us again. It's been a wonderful conversation, and we really appreciate your time, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. Just thank you.
Thank you for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. And we want to thank all our listeners for tuning in today. And we hope that you've enjoyed and become inspired by today's guest, Jennifer Povey. And we want to give you all a huge thank you and shout out once again for joining us. And this is the Spaceman for the Halfling and the Spaceman podcast. Over and out.